We are starting our Show Love campaign, and to begin, this is a year-long campaign, Race for What is embarking on, that we plan on really focusing on how showing love can bring healing to a system of racism, a system of Eurocentric colonialism, however you want to look at it. We have a system where many aspects are void of love, and showing love is going to be very important in the healing process. That being said, I don't want to paint a picture that this is an easy healing process. It's not black and white. It's not a smooth road. It really has some nuances as we go through this healing process, that the purpose of continuing and keeping to push through is going to be very important. As white folks, we could end up being hurt. Those of us participating in this, seeking for racial justice or seeking for healing and repair, can be hurt along the way. We can just be hurt walking outside and going and living our lives. And when things happen, we could have some really tough decisions to make based on certain circumstances and situations. And so I don't want to downplay that this is a tough road that could have bumps along the way and very conflicted emotional things that occur. And so I want to give an example of my own life. Very recently I was carjacked. A young black 17-year-old kid hopped in the back of my car. I drive Uber for a living. I've driven for over 2 years, a lot of rides. I do it full time to just support the growth of Race for What and what we're doing. And in doing so, I've picked up over 9,600 rides, and about 3 or 4 of them I wish I never picked up. But the majority of them have been great, have been people that just are happy that you're here to pick them up and take them where they need to go. Whether it's to work, whether it's after getting drunk, whether it's from one house to another, whatever that may be, for the most part, there's really good people. And for the most part, the need for Uber is in less fortunate, marginalized communities, where maybe they can't afford the whole car payments and everything like that. Maybe they can't afford to save up for the down payment and whatnot. For whatever reason, Uber is a very useful tool in these communities. And these are also the communities that, based on the scarcity system, lead to a higher level of crime. And so I was a victim of this crime, right? Young kid gets in the back, it's cold outside, he's got a hoodie on, he's got the COVID face mask on. And I've taken plenty of people like this. We're having a conversation, we're talking about family, and then all of a sudden it starts to take a left, and he starts to create some weird story and talk about pain, and at that moment I knew I was in trouble. So I was able to get out of it alive. Took my car, he took my phones, he took my wallet. I had to empty out my pockets, gun to the back of the head, and get out of there alive. I knew it was coming before it happened, and yet my most important thing was to get out of there and deal with the frustration of rebuilding afterwards, right? And also deal with the fact that I may have upset a lot of my friends and family. My best friend right here cussed me out. All right? He worries about me when I'm driving Uber. He knows that I'm going into these communities, marginalized communities, to help people out, to drive them where they need to go, right? He knows that I care enough not to try and discriminate and avoid those areas. And yet, them and my family made me now, after this incident, commit to them that I will no longer go into certain areas where, for the most part, there's a lot of people in need of rides, very important rides to get to work. And that's very conflicting for me, but I have to agree to those that I love to do this for a little while, to do this for the moment until I can build up Race for What to where I want it to be. That's one of the conflicting things that's going on with me right now, based on being carjacked. After the carjacking, I had a high level of adrenaline that eventually went down. And as it went down, I started to feel the effects of the trauma. And about 3 days later, I decided I wanted to just drive Uber again and just find out whether or not I was truly traumatized. My second ride that night ended up being a man who I knew was a black man's name. And I, for the first time in I don't know how long, my life really probably, that I got nervous going to see a black man. Like shivering panic inside of me. And I still went, and I went to pick him up, and what did he come out with? A hoodie on. Why? Because it's cold outside. And when he got in the car, he put on a hard hat. Why? Because he was going to work. And he put on goggles, because he was going to work at a factory where he needed to wear those things. And I see all of this, and I'm telling you, my whole body was in straight shivering from panic. And in my mind, I'm still saying, hey, he's going to work. I asked him how he was doing. He said, just going to work. As we drove through, there seemed to be some obstacles, 18-wheelers in the way that I had to maneuver around. And he thanked me because I wasn't going to make him late for work. But I'm still panicked about this whole situation, staring at him through the rearview mirror. And eventually, I just broke down and I said, hey, do you mind if I'm vulnerable with you for a moment? And I told him about Race for What. I told him about my upbringing. And I told him about the carjacking. And I said, for the first time in my life, I'm watching you as a black man, and I am nervous as... He thanked me for sharing. He told me it was okay to have PTSD following that traumatic experience. He looked up Race for What, saw what I was about, recognized that I was being honest, and he was just appreciative of me sharing this story with him and being open to it while I'm sitting there staring at him through the rear view. It was so healing for me that I allowed myself to be vulnerable, and I allowed him to help me through and process some of this. A person I had no idea who he was before we met. We shared an experience that allowed some healing to take place. That's important. The next big step was when the judge, I had to go online, nonetheless, before the judge and tell whether I wanted this young black kid who the police caught by destroying my vehicle with the strip because he tried to get away, not caring that I still have to pay for that vehicle and whatnot. But that's a whole nother problem that we will be touching on in later content. But I had to decide whether I wanted this young black kid to be detained or sent home with his mom while they gather the evidence. I had to decide how much I really want to support the system to detain him, a system that I know is not really set out to rehabilitate him, a system doesn't want to give him better options, right, to help him improve his life, a system that causes so much of this based on the level of violence and deception practices that are throughout our culture. And yet when I heard his voice, I was shivering. When I saw him not really give a damn that he had done some damage to somebody else's life, I did want him detained. And that's a very conflicting feeling for me, because I do want the healing to take place. And yet that instance, that one moment in time, that one person, and the way his mother didn't really seem too surprised that he did it, none of that was going to be the actual healing process in this overall journey. For that moment, I wanted to protect anybody else from this happening to. And I had to make a decision to go and support a decision. Not that my choice in what I had to say really influenced the judge to hold him for detainment. But they did take it in consideration. And my consideration was that I did not want him to do this to anybody else. That he had my house keys, he had my address from my wallet, all of these things. I have dealt with this inner conflict, and this inner conflict is going to continue as we go through this healing process. And the purpose of continuing to work through these things is really important as we gain the healing. Working through some of the pains and discomforts is really important. And we can still find ways to show love throughout this process and recognize, even when we have tough decisions, where a system and others are not showing that love. Thank you.
We need to show love. Yeah, I'm gonna show love. Are you gonna show love?